NXIVM, was it a self-help group or a sex cult?
And how did one of its top leaders bring it all crashing down?
We're doing a full recap of Escaping NXIVM on this episode of So Much Crime,
So Little Time. Hey Dee, so it's playoff time in NBA basketball and hockey, and I don't know, it's just making me think about how during playoff time, there's just so much less to do because they have these off days between games. And so I was thinking, what better way to spend your off time waiting for the next playoff game than going to patreon.com/so-much-crime-so-little-time. I figured the overlap between the true crime fans of our show and like big time NBA and NHL fans is basically like it's a 1-to-1, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Balances out.
So go over to Patreon, get some early released episodes, longer time machines, outtakes, bonus content, and what a great way to spend your time waiting for the next basketball or hockey game. Plus that awesome feeling of supporting this show, just like you support your team.
Keep the support going.
Patreon.com/so-much-crime-so-little-time.
Thank you. Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff. And before we start, just a quick warning.
Warning.
This episode is going to have spoilers for Escaping NXIVM. We're going to discuss the whole series.
If you haven't listened yet, check out our preview episode on this show. It's the one before this one in your feed.
You'll also find a link for Escaping NXIVM in our show notes.
Before we jump into our thoughts and feelings and vibes, let's do a quick recap of the podcast and specifically what we heard in episode 1. So this was released way back in 2018, which feels like it shouldn't be that long ago, but it's quite a while. Turns out it's 7 years ago, because that's the year my son was born.
I don't think that's right.
I think it is. His birthday card said 7 years old, and he was born in 2018. Jeff.
Oh right. Yeah.
The host is Josh Block. There are 8 episodes plus a couple of bonus episodes. They all range from about 30 to 40 minutes each without the ads. But what was the story that we actually heard from episode 1?
So in episode 1, we met Sarah Edmonson. She had just escaped from this NXIVM cult when the episode started. So we learned a little bit about the cult. It's called NXIVM. That's spelled NXIVM. But pronounced NXIVM because, sure. It's ostensibly about self-improvement, but kind of sounds more like a multi-level marketing scam. And so a lot of that episode, we also heard about this initiation ritual that Sarah went through to join this kind of super selective group of women, where they all got branded with this cauterizing iron. And it was pretty horrific, pretty hard to listen to, but we just kept listening. And we went through the other 7 episodes. I also listened to a couple of the bonus episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And let's jump in and discuss. There were no more graphic descriptions of people getting branded. So there's that.
One
of my big questions for you was, beyond Keith and his ego and like satisfying his sexual needs and his power needs, like, what was the point? Like, what was he trying to accomplish? Like, why did he think that he could get away with this? Why did, like...
What, the entire thing? Or
the whole thing. Yeah, the whole thing.
Oh, the whole thing. Because he was getting away with it for so long. Like, there's this call with the mother and father. Or, sorry. His mum rang his dad to say he's lying to loads of girls. He's saying that he loves them all. There's so many women around. Like, I don't know how to help him with this. Like, this isn't right. Like, that was from, when he was his teenage years.
He was young, yeah.
But he was getting away with it. I feel like, so. To be fair, if you take away all the crap of this, from a Keith point of view, people adore him. Apparently people like when they like them. People adored him. People listened to him and thought he was elevated. They accepted when he said he was more than. Women apparently wanted to have sex with him. And others obviously were forced. I'm aware that is also brought up here. But I'm just saying a number of women in the organisation seemed to want to also have sex with them. And he was making a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
From this. So really, what is the downside to him doing this? I mean, obviously it's illegal and there's racketeering and it's a pyramid scheme. I get all that aspect. But when he's getting away with this for so long, what's the downside? And in fact, what the wildest part to me is he obviously kept pushing this entire thing to get more control and to feed into this more sadistic kink that he had to control women, even with the whole DOS situation, that he nothing was ever enough. You know, once one thing happened, he needs the next. It's like an addict. Like, he needs the next thing. Even so far as he's in prison. And he had a group of people who are still his followers that organized a dance outside the prison so he could see them during COVID when there was no visitors allowed. And they weren't allowed to do it if it was just for him because it was seen as communication. So they said it was for everyone and to bring joy to everyone, but they kept singing and they had a sign that said K Rose, like K-A-Y Rose. Obviously K-R being Keith Raniere. So it was like the whole point was like, this is for you. He's still from in there getting the next thing and the next thing. So why wouldn't he?
I hear what you're saying. That makes sense. That does make sense.
Even this whole, oh, you want to talk to Keith? I'll let him know you're coming to see him play volleyball.
The volleyball. Oh my God, the volleyball thing. Yeah.
Like, what is that? And then
midnight volleyball.
Like having that, the fact that people would do that in order to get a few minutes with them.
Yeah.
This is what he created. He created this sense. And even his birthday, like, I think I've said on this podcast before, my father-in-law has often slagged me over how long I like my birthday celebrations to be, which has shortened since I've had kids. But, you know, I'm not expecting everyone around me to come and adore me for 3 weeks straight and like be involved in singing and dancing to tell me, oh my God, I'd hate it. I can barely stand if someone gives me a compliment. But this idea that he did this and people allowed him to, I mean, they were calling him fucking Vanguard, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Yeah. The nickname was a little much.
So he gave it to himself, but yet Nancy, the woman who was the co-creator of this, was prefect.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that felt very familiar in terms of things that we hear about from other egomaniacal sort of borderline sociopaths or actual sociopaths. Like the idea of what they call the NXIVM flip, where, you know, you come with a criticism and it gets kind of flipped back on you as like a deficiency in you. And I mean, you do that to me all the time where you say that sounds like a you problem. But like that's a little less toxic.
I mean, often, well, I don't think that's the same thing as me just explaining that the thing you're giving out about isn't the other person's problem. It's your problem.
It's the first thing I thought of when I heard that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is. One other thing is this concept of collateral, that you have to give over collateral, whether it's money, nude photos, a lot of nude photos floating around.
Well, of course. How many nude photos of men were floating around, do you reckon?
I didn't hear about any in the podcast.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it was only women.
Mm-hmm.
As well as like secrets. And sometimes these are like made up secrets. Like you just have to sign over a fake secret because it's potentially something they could blackmail you over.
It's so weird. And the lawyer, I know we'll talk about the lawyer episode, but the lawyer is saying basically none of this was ever released. And I was like, okay, so is it just the threat that it's hanging? And he was like, it obviously makes sense that you're going to put up collateral so that you're agreeing to something. Like, yeah, they're not buying a fucking house. They're agreeing to call someone master and respond within 1 minute of a message coming through at any time of the day. Like, it's not the same thing as putting up collateral for a loan. It's just not.
He
there was a description of a woman having to have her face in a photo with her labia, like her inner labia. What the fuck? what the fuck? Like, that is not the same as putting down a down payment or putting like a co-sign on a car loan.
I mean,
it's not the same.
I bought a house once. I don't remember that being part of the deal. It was a long time ago.
Like one of the options.
Pretty sure that is not okay. I know the lawyer really made it sound like not that big of a deal. Didn't really buy that. He also, he kind of shrugged off a lot of things that seemed a little wrong.
I'm torn with the lawyer. Part of me thought he was half brainwashed by Keith because he kept using a lot of the phrases. A lot of his thought process was very much NXIVM aligned, but maybe that's the point of him saying, no, like some of what Keith was saying, like, makes sense and blah, blah, blah. And I think there's an element of truth to that. That some of what was being said in NXIVM made sense, like it's good for growth, etc.
Yeah.
Not collateral. But then the other half, I was like, is he taking the piss out of Keith? He spoke so often about going and like saying, we'd have a 2 to 3 hour meeting and Keith would be talking to me about the fundamentals of, or the like structure of the justice system. And I'm trying to say we need to focus on your case. And he just wanted to sit there and advise me on how to do my job. And in a way, I was like, is this his way of outing what a nightmare he is to work with?
I 100% thought that, but I also recognized that he said how he was getting paid by this blind trust that was, he's making bank off of this case. He's also the one who defended the farmer bro, Martin Shkreli. And like, I think this man knows how to cash a check. But the way he wrote off the branding as like comparing it to like what happens in like frats. And like, it is true that there are frats that involve branding.
Like tattoos or something.
No, like actual branding. Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
He said that it was sexist to say that when men do it, it's okay, and when women do it, it is somehow wrong. Which I feel like
when men do it, they call them Marines. When women do it, they call them victims. Oh, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, like that's so.
Sorry, that was my thought on that.
Well, in the same way that he brushed off that this was a sex cult by saying that somehow sex with Keith cures your intimacy issues, and it's really more of a cuddle cult.
Yeah, so I wonder how he feels about the 13-year-old girl who was cuddling Keith. And by cuddling, he was like, you put your groin area close up against each other. And then he proceeded to have sex with her a year later.
Yeah. No, there were multiple underage girls involved with this. There was the girl in the bonus episode who was 15, I think. Yeah, Camilla, who was 15, and he also had sex with her two sisters. And she, as a 15-year-old girl, admitted she had a crush on another boy, and she got basically put in like solitary confinement for 2 years. So this is like a list of things that I can just be outraged about from this. I had a question I wanted to ask you. So Sarah.
Yes.
Sarah's at the center of this. There's a question that comes up in the last episode about, is Sarah more of a victim or is she a perpetrator in this? And some of the people who were caught up in this cult see her less as a victim and more as a perpetrator because she brought so many people in, and feeling like maybe she's either not appropriately apologetic or hasn't done enough to sort of combat this, or just like she hasn't atoned for her own wrongs. What do you think of that?
I posed this question in the preview episode about the fact that she lived in a fancy house.
Yeah, you did.
And that was interesting to me. I don't know if I see her as more of one than the other. It seemed to me then that when she really started to really see it, that she like nearly like a switch flipped and she was like, I'm out. So I think maybe particularly hearing from her mother and hearing how her mother saw Sarah change over the years that she joined. I think maybe that all made me feel more like she was a victim. And she said, she was like, I still want to do good. I want to help people grow. And I think there's an element of her that wants to take the good sides of this out and say, yes, like giving people an opportunity to be accountable for what they want in life and encouraging people and motivating people is a positive thing. I don't know. I can't but see her as a victim because she tried to get other people out. She didn't just back away herself. She tried to get other people out. It just, yeah, I don't know.
Keith got sentenced to 120 years in prison. He got fined $1.75 million. Many of the women at the top of this organization also went to prison, including, what's her name, the woman from Smallville. She went to prison.
Alice Mack.
Yes.
Alison Mack.
She went to prison for a couple of years.
She's out as of 2023.
Where do you draw the line? Like, they went to prison because of their involvement at the top of this organization. Sarah was arguably a little lower down in the leadership. Like, she opened the Vancouver office. She did recruit a lot of people in this organization. She was
she was under Lauren Salzman, and Lauren outed Keith.
And Lauren went to prison, right?
No.
Lauren was charged, I believe.
She was charged, but because she was helpful to the police, so helpful to the police in getting Keith sent to prison, she did not go.
Sarah, I guess,
Sarah was below Lauren. And Lauren's mum even only went for 3 years. Nancy?
Okay. Sarah is sort of like a middle manager in all this, right? Like she is.
Middle management, or fave. Yep.
But she's not at the bottom of this organization. She is not purely innocent in this, who was just recruited and did no wrong. She did some wrong things, but...
Yeah, but she was a whistleblower.
She was. She was arguably, well, I mean, from the perspective of this podcast, the most high profile, biggest whistleblower. I mean, there were others.
Yeah, because anyone else that were leaving were too low down. They didn't have the information. They also didn't have the forethought to record some things.
Yeah, I did. I actually thought the way that she and Nippy left was really kind of fascinating to listen to, like how they staged sort of a fight and had like these different events that they kind of orchestrated and recorded them. That was, I thought, fairly clever.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting way to have approached the leaving.
Well, because we heard from
work.
Other people about how you leave and you get harassed, you get horrible things happen to you by leaving, and you have to find a way to leave without, like, that's a fear tactic of keeping people in. My point, I guess, I just think I agree with you. I just think I empathize with the people who still find fault with her. Like, I don't think she should have gone to prison. I do think she helped bring down this organization. I think that's really bold and noble what she did, but it is complicated.
No, I do agree, and I think there was elements. Even when her and Nippy were interviewed, there was elements of what they said that was, I don't know if I'm going to say problematic, but maybe a sign that at this point they weren't long after leaving, and maybe there was some things that were still deep inside of them. Her saying she doesn't like how many women use cramps as an excuse not to go to things. I mean, that's a real, your cramps are in your head. They're fucking not in my head.
I don't think that's biology.
That's not where they are. I can't not think about them and then they go away. Especially like whatever about her, but maybe her friends, maybe her loved ones have worse pain than her. Maybe they feel it differently. I get the point of like get up and go and like have motivation to try and push through things. I think there's an element of like sitting there and saying woe is me at all times. There are people that do that, and I get that, but like, I don't know, the fact that they were speaking about gender in a very it felt a very defined way.
Yes.
Didn't sit well with me for a variety of reasons.
Defined is a good word for it. It's incredibly binary. It's deeply sexist and degrading.
Indeed,
to women.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that just permeated this whole thing.
Yeah, but as I said, like they were only just out at this stage, and so like we have to take an element of what that would do to them. There was another person, just before we leave the Sarah discussion, who mentioned that I think this is a little bit cynical, to be honest, but they basically said Sarah's an actor, and because she's an actor, acting is her profession, and her sustained success at NXIVM, both of those things require a high level of self-belief, ruthlessness, and deception. And the two things that startled this person about Sarah, number one was she seemed most affronted at the brand marring her perfect body more than the pain, indignity, and assault that it involved. And the second thing was her disbelief that Raniere was sleeping with tons of other women because he'd never made a pass at her. Then she kind of rationalized that his financial talk to her was a kind of a come on, so maybe it's possible that he'd slept with all the others.
I think that's overly cynical. I think the thing about the brand being the only mark on her perfect body was totally understandable. Like, she didn't have any scars or tattoos or...
I mean, but if she did, does that make it any less like shocking for you?
No, she was branded with this dude's initials.
Sorry, I'm not. No. But I'm just saying, like I actually think this was a very cynical review. I would more say that her reaction or her feeling about her body being pristine, I think might have been the word she used, and she didn't want a mark on it, wasn't so much about the fact that it's her body and she didn't want a mark on it. It was more a fact of her being deeply uncomfortable with something, and her having this mark now and having this discomfort over everything that she's gone through. It's like that symbol of it. So I think it's less about the fact that she didn't want it on her body. I'd say even looking back now, maybe at the time that wasn't even as big a factor. I know she said it was, but I feel like maybe it's when she looks back in hindsight, she's saying, this is the thing that's marred my body.
I think it's interesting to focus on that for a second, because the branding was the thing in that first episode that was so hard to listen to and was so brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me if I'm misremembering this, but I think the catalyst for her finally leaving was another branding. They were about to do another branding, and she was like, "This is too much. Like, we got to go now."
Well, it was that she realized the initials were there, and then she was like, "There's another branding coming up."
Yeah, and I think this is where, jumping back to that thing I mentioned earlier about how did Keith think that this was okay? It did feel, I know we're circling over a bunch of upsetting, disturbing things, but the branding thing just feels like it's such a leap. Maybe it's not, but it's so like over the top, permanent, violent, and unmistakable. Like, you're putting your initials in a permanent, like more permanent than a tattoo, on these women's bodies in the most like insensitive possible way. You could give them anesthetic. You're not doing that. You could do it as a tattoo. You're not even doing that. That would be painful, but this is more painful. This is more permanent. Like, it just seems like so extreme and so profoundly dehumanizing and insensitive. The mindset, like the level of ego and callousness and misogyny. Yeah, how do you get there? You explained it to me already, but I'm still struggling with it. Like how we got there.
Yeah, but you're trying to figure out in your mind how he would get there, but your mind is not the same as his.
I do want to say, on his mind, real quick, going back to the lawyer for a second, one of the things the lawyer said to talk about, and I couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic.
Oh, he's definitely being sarcastic. I know what you're going to say.
But talking about how smart Keith is and how he walked however many miles a day, and in prison he figured out a way, because he figured out this
geometry. He
figured out how to calculate the circumference of a circle, which I think most of us learn.
It's like in primary school maths. Like, it's not hard.
Yeah, it's really not. And I know I like geometry, but like this is geometry for like 9-year-olds. Like this is not the world's smartest man. He figured out he could walk in a circle and get his steps in. Anyway, sorry, that really got to me because it was.
Well, also, I actually didn't think you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say how he said, Josh asked him, "Did you think he was the most intelligent man in the world?" And he's like, "I've interviewed many men who have told me they're the most intelligent men in the world," which like is not shocking, really.
Sure.
When he's a prosecutor or when he's a
defense
attorney.
Yeah, I'm sure it comes up a lot.
I feel like one thing we haven't actually discussed, I know we're going into the story a lot, and I think that's important. Format-wise of the podcast, what was your vibe? Because I think there's a world where this story is really, really convoluted and not told in like a linear fashion. That's my thought. I don't think this podcast was that world, but I think that was a potential.
To me, the most interesting thing about the construction of this podcast was the sort of remarkable cosmic timing of it.
Yeah.
That Josh ran into Sarah within months after she got out, as this was a breaking story, as this cult was crumbling, as the sort of legal issue was catching up to Keith. And so we're going both kind of backward in time and forward. He's telling a fairly linear story, but sprinkling in elements of like, okay, what's happening now? What's like, it is a little bit of like flashback and then present day and then flashback and present day. I found it fairly easy to follow. I don't know. Did you have trouble with it?
No. I was at the same time I was listening to an audiobook. Not at the same time, like not the exact same time, like two
one ear and other
different
ear.
One ear. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the audiobook made me fall asleep many times, but this did not. This was great. It was really engaging. I wanted to hit the play button the next episode. I was kind of annoyed when I had to, parent or work or something or drive the car, but the kids are in it because like this is
not safe
suitable for kids. No.
Yeah.
I thought the format was really good. I thought Josh did a really good job at telling the story. I thought it was important to mention in the last episode the conversation he had with his friends who also knew Sarah from years before, where they said, I think she knew. I think, she has all this money and what's she doing about it? And, he did bring that in. I'm not sure if I feel like he probed her enough. I think in that final interview, well, what we hear is the final interview, it seems like he does push her a bit and say, what do you think about your culpability in this? Like, do you think you deceived people? So I thought that was good. But it's kind of like Lords of Death, where we have a subjective storyteller or narrator? Yeah. Probably not, but there's also a podcast out where someone went in and interviewed Keith Raniere and created a podcast based on that. So that's not going to be subjective.
Objective.
Thank you. Objective host. Okay, who's going to be able to tell this story in an objective fashion?
No, I'm glad you brought up Lords of Death, because in Lords of Death we talked about Thrasher Banks and how he was, he was a kid when that crime happened, and he was obviously like not an objective host, and he was an unreliable narrator in certain ways, but he was open about that. It was very transparent. And I think the same thing is true here. I actually appreciated how Josh kept coming back to the fact that he'd been friends with Sarah when they were, 2 years old, and they went to the same camp together. And, that even came up when he met with her mom. Most narrators are unreliable. It's just how unreliable are they and how transparent are they about their own biases. And I think he was very upfront about his relationship with Sarah, his friendship with Sarah, and his history there. And I think that put it on the table and let us kind of be the judge of that. I really appreciate how he did that. Mm. So you've listened to this before.
I don't know if I listened to the whole thing before. I remember the first episode. I wonder, did I listen to that? I wonder, was I pregnant? I was real freaked out by a lot of stuff when I was pregnant. So maybe I didn't listen to the rest of it.
You heard at least some of this before.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you want to revisit this?
Because I remember, do you know what? I didn't remember the details of the story before. when I listened to it before, when I suggested it. What I remembered was a feeling. I remember feeling like this is really well done, and feeling like this is not enjoyable to listen to. Like, it is uncomfortable.
So let's listen to it again.
Well, yeah, because that's the making of a good podcast in a way.
Sure.
Or a certain type. You know, there's not just one category or one way to define a good podcast. But if I keep thinking about it, if I haven't forgotten about it, if there's either a feeling or a person or a scene, that's the sign. It's the same like the movie, The Accused. It was a great movie. Made me feel real uncomfortable. We'll never watch it again.
Yeah, I'll never watch American History.
But I remember it. I don't remember Star Wars.
Would you recommend this?
Absolutely. Are you going to recommend this? Who are you going to recommend this to? Who in your life?
All my former high school friends. I have family out in the Albany area, a bunch of family out there. Yeah, I want to make sure that they're listening to this. No, I mean, this is a well-told story. I would definitely recommend this. But it goes to some rough places right from the start.
Indeed.
If you like how we did this episode, if you enjoyed listening, we encourage you to give us a rating. Go over on Spotify, Apple, 5-star rating. We do really appreciate that. It maybe is hard to tell, but that does really help people find this show. Same thing with leaving a comment. It just helps the show kind of pop when people are looking for new true crime podcasts to listen to. So we really appreciate that. If you're not already following us on Instagram, TikTok, we're on YouTube as well. Just look for So Much Crime, So Little Time. Follow us there. Like and forward and share with your friends all the fun stuff we're putting on the social media channels. And tell a friend. If you're not on the social media channels, just give them a call, send them a text, send them an email, send them a letter, send them a card, send them a telegram, send them a fax. Calm
down, Jeff. Not everyone is as old as you and knows how to send a telegram.
Okay. Whatever your method of communication of choice is, thank you. All right, Dee, next time, we're going to go somewhere we've never been before.
Where are we going?
We're going to the Philippines.
Ooh.
16-year-old Ruby gets a job offer to work in a computer shop from some unknown woman over Facebook. Ruby is...
Seems legit.
Sure. She is eager to get herself a better life, so she leaves her mountain home to try it out, but it ends up, as I'm sure you can guess because it's a true crime podcast, going pretty badly. So I thought after Escaping NXIVM, we could check out a different kind of sex trafficking story just to see how it compares. Very different kind of story, very different place, very different plot. This is called Finding Ruby. That is on the next So Much Crime.
So Little Time. So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of MimeGov Media. The executive producer is Paxton Calariso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show in your podcast app. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.